Can you really afford to own a home? Hidden costs exposed. Welcome back to Luxona, where millionaires are made. I'm your host, and today we're going to have a conversation that's going to make some of you uncomfortable. If you're sitting there thinking about buying a house because your rent went up $50 and you're tired of throwing money away, you need to pump the brakes. I'm going to give you some tough love today, and it might hurt, but it's going to save you from making the biggest financial mistake of your life. I've been studying wealth building for years, and I've seen more people destroy their financial future with a house than with just about anything else. Not because home ownership is bad, but because they bought a house they couldn't afford with money they didn't have for reasons that made no sense. So, let's get real about what it actually costs to own a home. Because the banks sure aren't going to tell you the truth. And if you want even more detailed strategies on building wealth through real estate and other investments, make sure you check out my Patreon, where I go deep into the advanced tactics that separate the wealthy from everyone else. The hidden costs that will eat you alive. First up, let's talk about property taxes. The bank will tell you what your mortgage payment is, but they won't tell you that in some areas you're going to pay $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000 a year in property taxes. That's over $1,000 a month on top of your mortgage payment. And guess what? Those taxes go up every year, whether you got a raise or not. Then there's insurance. Homeowners insurance isn't optional, and it's not cheap. You're looking at anywhere from $800 to $3,000 a year, depending on where you live and what kind of coverage you need. And if you live in Florida or Texas, where the weather wants to kill your house, good luck with those premiums. But wait, there's more. If you put down less than 20%, you get the privilege of paying PMI, private mortgage insurance. That's another $100 to $300 a month that does absolutely nothing for you except protect the bank if you default. It's like paying rent to your own mortgage company. Now let's talk about the big one that nobody wants to discuss: maintenance and repairs. Here's the rule. Every year, you should budget at least 1 to 3% of your home's value for maintenance and repairs. That means if you buy a $300,000 house, you better have $3,000 to $9,000 sitting around every year just to keep it from falling apart. New roof, $20,000. HVAC system goes out, $8,000. Plumbing problems, electrical issues, appliance replacements, it never ends. Don't even get me started on utilities. Your electric bill is going to be higher because you're heating and cooling more space. Your water bill jumps because you've got a yard to water and a bigger house to maintain. Gas, trash, sewer, it all adds up. And if you're unlucky enough to buy in a neighborhood with an HOA, congratulations, you just signed up for another monthly payment that can range from $50 to several $100s a month, plus special assessments when they decide the community needs a new pool or the roads need repaving. Here's what the real estate agents won't tell you. When you add up all these costs, that mortgage payment you qualified for might only be half of what you're actually going to spend on housing every month. What you actually need to earn. Now let's talk about what you really need to earn to own a home responsibly. Forget what the bank says you qualify for. Banks are in the business of lending money, not making sure you can sleep at night. Here's my rule. Your total housing costs should never exceed 25% of your take-home pay, and you should only get a 15-year fixed-rate mortgage. Not 30 years, not an adjustable rate, not an interest-only loan. 15 years, fixed rate, period. Let me break this down for you. If you're taking home $4,000 a month after taxes, your total housing costs should be no more than $1,000. That includes your mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, PMI if you have it, and basic maintenance. If you can't make the numbers work with those parameters, you can't afford the house. This means if you want to buy a $300,000 house, you better be taking home at least $8,000 to $10,000 a month, depending on your area's taxes and insurance costs. That's a gross income of somewhere between $140,000 to $180,000 a year for most people. I know what you're thinking, but everyone else is doing it differently. Yeah, and everyone else is broke. Everyone else is living paycheck to paycheck, even with six-figure incomes, because they're house poor. The right way to save for a down payment. So how do you save up for a down payment without going into debt? You follow a systematic approach. First, you get a $1,000 emergency fund. Then, you pay off all your debts except your house. Then, you save 3 to 6 months of expenses for a full emergency fund. Only then do you start saving for a house. This might mean you rent for a few more years while you get your financial house in order. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. Renting isn't throwing money away if you're using that time to build wealth and eliminate debt. When you're ready to save for that down payment, you want to put down at least 20%. On a $300,000 house, that's $60,000, plus closing costs, plus moving expenses, plus immediate repairs and furnishing costs. You're looking at $75,000 to $80,000 in cash before you even think about making an offer. Who should buy and who should rent? Home ownership isn't for everyone, and there's no shame in that. You should only buy a house if you're planning to stay in the same area for at least 5 years, preferably 10. You should have a stable career and income. You should be completely debt-free, except for your house. And you should have a fully funded emergency fund on top of your down payment. If you're single and might get married, if you might have kids and need to move school districts, if your job might relocate you, if you're in a volatile industry, if you're still figuring out your career path. Rent. Rent and invest the difference. Here's who home ownership is perfect for. Families who have found their forever community. People with stable careers who know they're staying put. People who have their financial foundation solid and want to build equity in real estate as part of their wealth-building strategy. The forced savings account truth. Now, a house can act as a forced savings account, and that's one of the benefits of ownership. Every month, part of your payment goes toward principal, building equity. Over time, hopefully, your house appreciates in value. But here's the catch. If you're house poor, if you're stretching to make payments, if you have no emergency fund because you spent it all on the down payment, you're not building wealth. You're just moving money from one pocket to another while living in financial stress. I've seen too many people who look wealthy on paper because they own a nice house, but they're living paycheck to paycheck. They have no retirement savings, and they're one job loss away from foreclosure. House versus stock market investment. Here's something to consider. If you don't have a solid down payment yet, you might be better off investing in the stock market while you rent. Over the long term, the stock market has averaged about 10% annual returns. Real estate typically appreciates at about 3 to 5% annually, not counting the costs of ownership. If you put that down payment money into good growth stock mutual funds instead of a house, you might actually build wealth faster, especially when you factor in all the costs of home ownership. Plus, your money is liquid. You can access it if you need it without selling your house and paying realtor fees. Now, I'm not saying don't buy a house. I'm saying don't buy a house until you can afford to buy it the right way, with a solid financial foundation underneath you. The bottom line: home ownership can be a blessing or a curse, and it all depends on your situation. If you buy a house you can easily afford, with a large down payment on a 15-year mortgage While you're debt-free with a full emergency fund, it can be a great way to build wealth and provide stability for your family. But if you stretch to buy too much house, if you go into debt to make it happen, if you become house poor in the process, it will destroy your financial future. The American dream isn't about owning a house. It's about building wealth and having options. Sometimes that means renting while you get your financial life together. Sometimes that means buying a smaller house than you think you deserve. Sometimes that means waiting longer than you want to. But when you do it right, when you buy a house as part of a wealth-building strategy rather than an emotional decision, it can be one of the best financial moves you ever make. Remember, here at Luxona, we're not just talking about surviving financially, we're talking about thriving and building real wealth. And sometimes that means making the hard choices that others aren't willing to make. If you want to dive deeper into advanced wealth-building strategies, including detailed real estate investment tactics and portfolio optimization techniques that I can't cover in these videos, make sure you check out my Patreon. That's where I share the advanced playbook that separates the wealthy from everyone else. Don't let the pressure to keep up with the Joneses push you into a financial prison. Be smart, be patient, and make decisions based on math, not emotion. Your future millionaire self will thank you for it. That's it for today's video. If this helped you think differently about home ownership, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And remember, millionaires aren't made by accident. They're made by making smart decisions, one at a time.